I have to call her. She's staying in a hotel. You're incredible. And get this.
Seinfeld wasn't just a show about nothing. It was a pilot that tested worse than almost anything in NBC history, a cast that couldn't stand each other, and a rule that banned hugging or learning. One speech was improvised in a single take. 2 pregnancies were hidden with coats and purses. And in the finale, they rewrote it 3 times because it kept leaking. These are 20 weird facts about Seinfeld. And the bonus? A deleted scene so offensive, NBC locked it away and pretended the episode never had that ending. No hugging, no learning. This gets uncomfortable. Number 20. NBC almost canceled it after 4 episodes.
That is funny.
Now that's comedy.
Yeah, that's comedy.
Yeah, we got a lot of mail about that.
The Seinfeld Chronicles pilot aired in July 1989 to the worst test scores NBC had seen in years. Audiences hated it. The research department told executives it was confusing, unfunny, and had no likable characters. The test audience responses were brutal. Who are these people? Why should I care? Nothing happened. NBC executives looked at the data and wanted to cull it immediately. Cancel it, bury it, move on to something that tested better. But one executive, Rick Ludwin, saw something nobody else did. He thought it was smart, different, worth another chance. The problem was the budget. NBC wouldn't allocate money for a show that tested terribly. So Ludwin did something unprecedented. He had a budget for comedy specials, one-off shows and events that didn't fit anywhere else. He took money meant for specials and secretly used it to fund 4 more Seinfeld episodes. He didn't ask permission, just did it, figuring he'd apologize later if anyone noticed. Those 4 episodes slowly built a cult following. Not huge numbers, but passionate fans who got what the show was doing. NBC reluctantly ordered more episodes, still skeptical, but willing to see where it went. By season 3, Seinfeld was a legitimate hit. By season 5, it was the biggest comedy on television. And it all happened because one executive stole from his own budget to keep alive a show everyone else wanted dead. Ludwin later said it was the best decision of his career, and Jerry Seinfeld sent him a Porsche as a thank you gift when the show ended. Number 19. Jerry Seinfeld and Larry David had a no hugging, no learning rule.
Well, again, sorry about that little mishap. But once you get everything checked out, shouldn't be any more problems.
From the very first writers' meeting, Jerry Seinfeld and Larry David established one unbreakable rule that would define the entire series. No hugging, no learning. It became their mantra, their philosophy, the thing that separated Seinfeld from every other sitcom on television. Traditional sitcoms at the time followed a formula. Characters got into trouble, learned a lesson, hugged it out, and everything reset for next week. Full House, Growing Pains, Family Matters, they all operated this way. Seinfeld would do the opposite. If a writer pitched a story where a character learned something or grew as a person, it got shot down immediately. If a script had a sentimental moment or a hug between characters, Larry, David would literally cross it out with a red pen. The rule was absolute. These characters couldn't evolve, couldn't improve, couldn't become better people. They were narcissists trapped in perpetual adolescence. And that was the joke. Jerry, George, Elaine, and Kramer made the same mistakes repeatedly, never learned, never changed, and circled the drain of their own selfishness for 9 seasons. This was revolutionary television. It went against every sitcom convention, every network note, every focus group suggestion. NBC executives constantly pushed for warmth, for heart, for moments that made audiences feel good. Seinfeld and David refused every single time. The show became wildly successful, specifically because it rejected sentiment. Audiences were tired of fake lessons and forced hugs. They wanted comedy that reflected reality, where people don't learn, don't grow, just keep being themselves forever. The no hugging, no learning rule made Seinfeld the most influential sitcom of its era. Number 18. The Soup Nazi was a real person who sued the show.
Hey, Jerry! I didn't know you liked soup.
Hard to believe.
Al Yeganay ran a soup stand on West 55th Street in Manhattan. His soups were legendary, lines stretched around the block, but his customer service was tyrannical. He had strict rules. Order quickly, move to the left, no substitutions, no questions. If you violated protocol, he'd refuse to serve you, yell at you, and ban you permanently. New Yorkers tolerated it because the soup was incredible. Larry David experienced it firsthand, got yelled at for ordering wrong, and immediately knew it was perfect for Seinfeld. The episode aired in November 1995 and made Yeganey instantly famous. His business exploded. Tourists flooded his stand, wanting the soup Nazi experience. But Yeganey was furious. He hated the Nazi label, felt it was offensive and racist, and claimed it destroyed his reputation. He started yelling at customers who called him Soup Nazi, put up signs saying he wasn't a character on a TV show, and refused to acknowledge Seinfeld existed. The attention became overwhelming. Eventually, he closed his original location and tried to franchise the business. Then, he sued. Yeganey filed a lawsuit against Seinfeld, NBC, and Castle Rock Entertainment, claiming defamation and loss of business from the Nazi Association. He demanded millions in damages. The lawsuit went nowhere, dismissed quickly because the character was clearly a protected parody. But Yeganey never forgave the show. He spent years giving angry interviews about how Seinfeld ruined his life. Meanwhile, Soup Nazi entered the cultural lexicon, referenced constantly, one of the most iconic episodes in television history, all because a real soup vendor couldn't handle being made famous. Number 17. The marine biologist's speech was almost entirely improvised.
I never see his name in there.
Well, he's kind of modest.
The Marine Biologist is considered one of Seinfeld's greatest episodes, and its climax features George's monologue about saving a beached whale. The sea was angry that day, my friends, like an old man trying to send back soup in a deli. It's poetic, hilarious, perfectly delivered, and almost none of it was scripted the way Jason Alexander performed it. Larry David wrote the basic setup. George pretends to be a marine biologist, encounters a beached whale, and has to save it. The outline existed, but the actual speech, the specific words and rhythm, David left that mostly to Alexander. During rehearsal, Alexander asked how detailed the speech should be. David told him to just go, to feel it out, to find the story as George would tell it. So Alexander improvised. He added the old man's soup metaphor on the spot. He created the rising tension, the dramatic pauses, the building absurdity. The first take was good. The second take was better. By the third take, Alexander had crafted something extraordinary. The crew stopped working to watch. When he finished, the studio audience erupted in applause, something that rarely happened mid-scene. David and Seinfeld paying for a lifetime of narcissism and cruelty. They kept almost all of Alexander's improvisation in the final script. The speech became the most celebrated moment of Alexander's career, the scene actor's study, the monologue that gets quoted endlessly. And it happened because Larry David trusted his actor enough to let him create in the moment. Sometimes the best writing isn't writing at all. It's knowing when to step back and let talent take over. Number 16. Julia Louis-Dreyfus was pregnant twice, and they hid it with coats and bags. Julia Louis-Dreyfus got pregnant twice during Seinfeld's run. Once during season 3, again during season 8. Both times, she and the producers faced the same question. Write the pregnancy into the show or hide it. They chose to hide it, both times, because Elaine being pregnant didn't fit the show's tone or philosophy. Elaine was selfish, career-focused, not maternal. Making her pregnant would force character growth, force sentiment, violate the no hugging, no learning rule. So they got creative with wardrobe and camera work. During season 3, costume designers dressed her in oversized blazers, long coats, and baggy sweaters. They gave her large purses to carry in front of her stomach. The camera operators shot her from the chest up whenever possible, avoided full body shots, kept her behind furniture or other actors. It worked reasonably well because she was only pregnant for part of the season. But during season 8, hiding it became significantly more difficult. She was pregnant for almost the entire production schedule. Much further along, much more visible. The techniques became more elaborate. Elaine suddenly started carrying enormous bags everywhere. purses the size of suitcases. She wore oversized men's coats and stood behind counters constantly. The camera work got more strategic, more careful, more obviously hiding something if you knew to look. Some episodes barely featured her because shooting around the pregnancy was too complicated. But it worked. Most viewers never noticed, never questioned why Elaine's wardrobe got progressively larger. And when Louis Dreyfus returned to normal size after giving birth, nobody commented on it because the show existed in a reality where time and consequences didn't matter anyway. Number 15. Larry David quit as showrunner but kept writing anonymously.
Oh, we forgot to pick a number.
After season 7 wrapped in May 1996, Larry David was exhausted, burned out, done. He'd been showrunner since the beginning, written hundreds of episodes, fought with NBC constantly, carried the creative weight of the biggest comedy on television. He told Jerry Seinfeld he was leaving, couldn't do it anymore, needed to step away. Seinfeld understood, but was terrified. The show was David's voice, his neurosis, his worldview. Without him, could Seinfeld even be Seinfeld? David left officially, no longer showrunner, no longer credited as executive producer. But he couldn't actually leave. The show was his baby, his masterpiece, his life's work. Within weeks of season 8 production starting, David was back, not officially, but secretly. He'd call writers late at night with story ideas. He'd read scripts and send pages of notes. He'd show up to the writer's room unannounced and pitch entire episodes. The new showrunner knew, welcomed his input, but they kept it quiet. NBC didn't know David was still heavily involved. They thought the show was surviving without him, proving it didn't need him. David wrote episodes under pseudonyms, contributed to major storylines, and influenced every aspect of season 8 and 9. He was particularly involved in planning the finale, co-writing it with Seinfeld, even though his name doesn't appear in the credits. The cast knew, appreciated his continued presence, but respected the secret. David later admitted he couldn't let go, that leaving officially was necessary for his sanity, but staying involved creatively was necessary for the show's soul. Sometimes quitting means stepping back just enough to breathe. Number 14. The cast's salary. Negotiations almost destroyed. The show.
Now, step 9?
Yeah. Making amends.
By season 9, Seinfeld was printing money for NBC. Advertising rates were the highest on television. Syndication deals were worth billions. Merchandise was everywhere. The 4 main actors, Jerry Seinfeld, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Jason Alexander, and Michael Richards, knew their value. They'd been making good money, but not superstar money, not what they deserved for carrying NBC's most profitable show. They hired the same lawyer, presented a united front, and demanded $1 million per episode each. NBC executives were stunned. $1 million per actor meant $4 million per episode just for the main cast. Over a full season, that was nearly $100 million in salary alone. The network balked, called it unreasonable, and said no show had ever paid that much. They offered less, significantly less. The actors refused to negotiate. $1 million each, or they walk. NBC threatened to replace them, to continue Seinfeld without the original cast. The actors called their bluff, knowing the show was nothing without them. The standoff lasted weeks with production deadlines approaching and no resolution. NBC finally caved, but not happily. They agreed to the salaries, made the actors among the highest paid on television, but the relationship was permanently damaged. Executives resented being held hostage. The actors felt they'd had to fight for compensation they'd earned. The negotiations poisoned the well, making everyone involved ready for the show to end. By the time they started filming season 9, both NBC and the cast knew this would be the final season. The money fight had culled any enthusiasm for continuing. Sometimes winning the battle means losing the war. Number 13. Michael Richards' Kramer was based on Larry David's real neighbor.
Well, for years, Kramer has lived in this New York apartment building.
Kenny Kramer was a real person. He lived across the hall from Larry David in Manhattan during the 1970s and 80s. And he was exactly like the character. Bizarre schemes, constant mooching, sliding into David's apartment unannounced, never working, but always having money somehow. David watched this man for years, fascinated and horrified in equal measure. When he and Jerry Seinfeld created the show, the neighbor character was pulled directly from Kenny Kramer's real life. The name, the apartment setup, the entire dynamic, all real. Kenny Kramer found out about it when the show premiered and immediately saw the opportunity. He didn't sue, didn't complain, didn't demand money. Instead, he leaned into it. He created Kramer's Reality Tour, a bus tour of New York City that visited all the real locations from Seinfeld and featured Kenny Kramer himself as the host. He'd tell stories about his time living near Larry David, point out the soup stand that inspired the Soup Nazi, show people where real events happened. The tour became hugely popular with tourists, running for years. Michael Richards studied Kenny Kramer's mannerisms, his speech patterns, his physical presence. But he also created something new, something more exaggerated and comedic. Kenny Kramer later said, Richards took the raw material and made it into art. He wasn't offended by the portrayal, was actually flattered, and made more money from being the real Kramer than he'd made in any of his actual schemes. Sometimes being the inspiration for a television character is more profitable than anything you actually do with your life. Number 12. The show filmed before a live audience that hated certain episodes.
Turning. Danny?
Yeah. Okay, you got speed.
E1.
Seinfeld was filmed in front of 300 people every week. Real audiences, real reactions, genuine laughter that made it into the final broadcast. Most episodes worked perfectly. The audience loved the characters, laughed at the setups and punchlines, created energy that elevated the performances. But some episodes bombed with studio audiences. The Contest, the infamous masturbation episode, played to uncomfortable silence. People laughed at first, then got quiet as they realized what the episode was actually about. The studio became awkward, tense, uncertain. Producers watched from the booth, horrified. The episode was brilliant, they knew it, but the live audience wasn't connecting. Similar issues happened with other controversial episodes. Anything too dark, too sexual, too weird. The studio audience struggled. They'd come expecting traditional sitcom fare and got challenged instead. Some audiences walked out during the Junior Mint because the surgery scenes made them queasy. Others sat in confused silence during episodes with complex storylines that required paying attention. This forced the production team to heavily sweeten the laugh track. They'd add artificial laughter during post-production, layering it over the awkward silence or weak responses. Editors would pull laughs from other episodes where the audience had been more enthusiastic and insert them where needed. The final broadcast sounded like the audience loved everything, but that was artificial. The real audiences were often confused, uncomfortable, or simply not into it. Seinfeld succeeded despite its studio audiences, not because of them. Sometimes innovation means the live crowd doesn't get it yet. Number 11. Jerry Seinfeld wanted to end it after season 7.
Realized we're kids. We're not men.
So then you asked yourselves,
When Larry David left as showrunner after season 7, Jerry Seinfeld seriously considered ending the show. He felt Seinfeld was Larry David's vision, as much as his own, that continuing without David as the creative leader was wrong. The show had peaked, maintained incredible quality for 7 seasons, and maybe that was enough. He talked to David about it, expressed his concerns, and suggested they go out on top. David understood, but told him the show could survive, that the writers they had developed were capable, that Seinfeld himself could carry it. NBC executives panicked when they heard Jerry was considering leaving. Seinfeld wasn't just a hit show, it was the network's identity, its biggest revenue generator, the thing that kept them competitive. They offered Jerry everything: complete creative control, unlimited budget, $1 million per episode for himself. Whatever he wanted. Network president Warren Littlefield personally met with Seinfeld multiple times, begging him to reconsider. They needed 2 more seasons minimum to satisfy syndication deals and advertising commitments. Seinfeld finally agreed, but reluctantly. He committed to 2 more seasons, 8 and 9, and made it clear that was it. No negotiations, no extensions. The show would end after season 9, no matter what. NBC agreed, grateful to have him at all. But Seinfeld later admitted those final 2 seasons felt different. He He was fulfilling an obligation more than creating from passion. The show remained excellent, but something had shifted internally. Sometimes continuing past your instinct to stop means success feels less satisfying, even when the quality remains high. Number 10. The finale was rewritten 3 times due to leaks.
Red Cross workers are for.
Well, the Samaritans were an ancient tribe. Very helpful to people.
All right,
Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld started planning the series finale months in advance. They wanted it to be perfect, memorable, and worthy of 9 seasons. They wrote a version, distributed it to the cast and key crew members, and within days, it leaked to tabloids. The New York Post ran a story detailing the exact plot. Entertainment Weekly published the ending. David was furious, felt betrayed, and scrapped the entire script. They started over with a completely different story, distributed it to a smaller group, and it leaked again within a week. This time, David lost his mind. He screamed at everyone, accused people of selling out the show, and threatened lawsuits. They started over a 3rd time, paranoid and secretive. This time, they distributed fake scripts to most of the cast and crew, complete storylines that were never going to film. Only a handful of people got the real script, and those pages were numbered and tracked. Anyone who leaked would be immediately identified. Additional fake scripts were distributed to network executives, different endings to different people to see who was talking. The version that eventually aired was written in near total secrecy, with scenes filmed out of order to prevent anyone from piecing together the real ending. Even the studio audience didn't see the complete finale. They filmed pieces without context. The paranoia and secrecy created tension on set, making the final weeks of production stressful and unpleasant. But it worked. The real ending didn't leak, and audiences got to experience the finale without knowing what was coming. The price was relationships damaged and trust destroyed during what should have been a celebration. Number 9. Jason Alexander threatened to quit over the engagement storyline. Susan Ross was George's fiancée, a relationship nobody believed would last, but somehow did. By season 7, George and Susan were actually engaged, planning a wedding, and the writers faced a problem. They'd written themselves into a corner. George couldn't actually get married. It violated everything the character was about, but they'd committed to this storyline. So Larry David came up with a solution. Cull Susan. Have her die from licking cheap, toxic wedding invitation envelopes. It was dark, absurd, perfect Seinfeld. Except Jason Alexander hated it. When Alexander read the script where Susan dies, he went straight to David's office and said, "This is cruel, unfunny, and character assassination." He argued that George, for all his flaws, wouldn't be this callous about someone's death. The scene had George showing minimal emotion, moving on quickly, more concerned about his freedom than Susan's life. Alexander felt it crossed a line from comedy into sociopathy. He told David if they filmed it as written, he'd seriously consider leaving the show. He wasn't bluffing, was genuinely upset, and felt the writers were destroying George's humanity for a cheap shock. David listened, then explained his reasoning. This is the most George thing possible. He gets trapped in an engagement he never wanted, and the universe provides an escape. Of course, he's relieved more than sad. That's who George is, a terrible person trying to pretend he's not. Alexander still disagreed, but understood David's logic. They filmed it with minor adjustments, Alexander playing George's reaction with slightly more complexity. The episode aired, audiences were shocked, and it became one of the most talked about moments in the series. Sometimes the darkest choices are the most honest. Number 8. The Yada Yada episode was written in one night.
Listen to this. Marcy comes over and she tells me that her ex-boyfriend was over late last night and yada yada yada, I'm really tired today.
The writer's room was stuck. They had a production deadline approaching, needed a script ready for filming in days, and had nothing. Every pitch fell flat. Every story idea led nowhere. The room was exhausted, frustrated, staring at whiteboards filled with crossed-out concepts. Someone, nobody remembers who exactly, was explaining why a pitch wouldn't work and said, yada yada yada, to skip over the boring parts. Another writer laughed and said, what if that's the episode? What if someone uses yada yada to skip over important, incriminating details? The room went silent. Then someone pitched Marcy using yada yada to gloss over sleeping with George's friend. Another writer suggested Jerry's dentist converting to Judaism for the jokes. Yada yada. Within minutes, they had the entire episode structure. A story about George's girlfriend using yada yada to hide terrible things. B story about Jerry and the dentist. C story about Elaine and her mentioning bisexuality. They wrote it overnight, literally stayed in the office until dawn, fueled by coffee and the energy of finally having something that worked. The script went straight to production with minimal revisions. The actors loved it. The table read, Khaled, and filming went smoothly. When it aired, yada 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 exploded into the culture. People started using it constantly. It entered the dictionary, became one of the most referenced Seinfeld catchphrases. And it happened because writers were desperate, exhausted, and someone said the right thing at the right moment. Sometimes the best ideas come from panic and sleep deprivation. Number 7. NBC censored. Over 30 episodes for syndication.
Holding a mirror up to the three guys, to Kramer, Jerry, and George, by showing them this alternative.
Seinfeld's original broadcasts were significantly edgier than what most people have seen. When the show entered syndication, playing multiple times daily on various networks, NBC's standards department went through every episode with strict guidelines. Daytime television had different rules than primetime. Sexual references had to be softened or removed. Controversial topics got cut. Specific language was deemed inappropriate. Over 30 episodes were edited, some losing entire subplots, others getting scenes trimmed or dialogue changed. The contest about masturbation was heavily censored. Lines referencing the actual act were removed. Visual jokes were cut. Entire exchanges disappeared. The Outing, where Jerry and George are mistaken for gay, lost several jokes that were considered too explicit. The Couch, where Elaine gets an abortion, had that storyline completely removed from syndicated versions, turning it into a confused mess about furniture shopping. Sexual jokes throughout the series were softened, making innuendo more subtle or cutting it entirely. Even some of Kramer's physical comedy was edited when deemed too suggestive. Fans who grew up watching syndicated reruns have never seen the real Seinfeld. The version that plays on afternoon television is watered down, sanitized, missing the edge that made it revolutionary. The original broadcasts were pushing boundaries constantly, challenging what sitcoms could discuss. The syndicated versions are safer, more palatable, and less interesting. Some episodes on streaming services have been restored to original versions, but decades of viewers only know the censored cuts. The real Seinfeld is sharper, darker, and more daring than its reputation suggests. Number 6. The cast couldn't stand each other. During season 4.
A mistake.
By season 4, Seinfeld was a legitimate hit, and that success created problems. The 4 main actors started competing for screen time, for storylines, for attention. Jason Alexander felt his character was being marginalized, that George's neurosis wasn't getting enough focus. Julia Louis-Dreyfus wanted Elaine to have more substantial plots beyond being the guy's friend. Michael Richards was frustrated when Kramer scenes got cut for time. The competition created genuine tension that bled into their off-camera relationships. Alexander and Louis-Dreyfus stopped speaking to each other between takes, not because of a specific fight, just accumulated resentment about perceived slights and unequal treatment. Richards isolated himself, stayed in his dressing room, avoided the others when not filming. Even Jerry Seinfeld, usually diplomatic and friendly, grew frustrated with the constant complaints and jealousy. He found himself mediating petty arguments about line counts and camera angles, exhausted by egos he'd never anticipated. The tension is visible on screen in season 4 if you know to look for it. The chemistry feels slightly off, the energy between characters less natural. Scenes that should crackle with rapport feel mechanical, performed rather than lived. By the season finale, relationships had deteriorated so badly that the cast had a meeting with Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld. They cleared the air, agreed to focus on the show rather than individual glory, and committed to collaboration. Season 5 started with renewed energy and repaired relationships. But season 4 remains the darkest period of production, when success nearly destroyed the ensemble that made the show work. Number 5, The Contest script was rejected by every network before NBC reluctantly approved it.
What? Yeah, I'm out of the contest.
Larry David wrote The Contest based on a real experience. He and friends had an actual contest about masturbation, who could go longest without doing it. He thought it was hilarious, perfectly absurd, exactly the kind of real-life ridiculousness that Seinfeld should capture. He wrote the script with confidence, knowing it was one of his best. Then he tried to get it approved. He showed it to Fox executives first, testing the waters. They said absolutely not, too inappropriate, and would never air. CBS saw it and had the same reaction. ABC wouldn't even read past the first page. David brought it to NBC, nervous but hopeful. They'd let Seinfeld push boundaries before, trusted his judgment, and understood the show's voice. The NBC Standards and Practices Department read it and said no. Too sexual, too explicit, would generate massive complaints from parent groups. David fought back, arguing it was actually a very moral episode about self-control, never showing anything inappropriate. The censors weren't convinced. They debated for weeks, with David threatening to quit if they wouldn't let him make the episode. Finally, NBC agreed to one condition. He could make the episode but couldn't use the word masturbation or any direct references to the act. Everything had to be euphemistic, implied, talked around. David agreed and rewrote it carefully. Master of your domain became the phrase, along with various creative euphemisms. The script got approved reluctantly, with NBC executives certain it would bomb or create a scandal. Instead, it became one of the most celebrated episodes in television history, won an Emmy, and proved that sometimes the things networks fear most are exactly what audiences want to see. Number 4, the show's budget was so low. Early on, they reused sets constantly.
For the cocktail, Franks.
Great. Ate the entire platter. Had to call in sick today.
What am I gonna do?
You should sleep with him.
In the early seasons, Seinfeld operated on an extremely limited budget. NBC wasn't convinced the show would succeed, so they didn't invest heavily in production design or location shooting. The writers had to craft stories around the few sets they could afford to build and maintain. Monk's Cafe, Jerry's apartment, and a handful of other locations appeared in almost every episode, not by creative choice, but by financial necessity. The writers couldn't pitch stories that required new locations because the money simply didn't exist. This limitation forced creativity. Writers learned to mine comedy from familiar spaces, finding new angles and situations within the same walls. Jerry's apartment became the central hub where everything converged. Monk's Cafe hosted countless conversations that drove plots forward. The hallway outside Jerry's door, Kramer's apartment entrance, George's parents' house in Queens, these locations appeared repeatedly because they were already built and paid for. Any script requiring extensive new sets got rejected or rewritten to fit existing locations. As the show became successful and the budget increased, this pattern was already established. The familiar locations had become signature elements, comfort zones for the audience. What started as a financial constraint became a stylistic choice. Even when they could afford more elaborate sets and location shooting, the show stuck mostly to its established spaces. The limitation created intimacy, made the world feel lived in and real, despite being obviously artificial. Sometimes poverty creates better art than abundance because it forces you to be resourceful rather than extravagant. Seinfeld's early budget limitations shaped its entire aesthetic identity. Number 3. Kramer's entrance was accidentally created. When Michael Richards tripped...
Hey, we're ordering Chinese food. If you want anything, let me know what it is and... Hey.
The iconic Kramer entrance, that sliding burst through Jerry's door that became the character's signature move, wasn't scripted or choreographed. It was an accident that became permanent. During early rehearsals for a season 1 episode, Michael Richards was practicing his entrance into Jerry's apartment. The script just said, Kramer enters. Nothing specific about how. Richards walked through the door normally a few times, and it felt flat, ordinary, not interesting enough for this bizarre character he was developing. On one take, Richards pushed the door open harder than intended, and his foot slipped on the smooth floor. He nearly fell, caught himself with an awkward sliding motion, and recovered with the momentum carrying him into the room. The cast started laughing. Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld watching from the side, looked at each other immediately. That's it. That's Kramer. They told Richards to do it again, exactly like that. Richards wasn't sure he could replicate an accidental slip, but he tried, finding the physical comedy in the slide and burst of energy. It worked perfectly. The entrance became Kramer's defining physical trait, happened in almost every episode, was anticipated and celebrated by audiences. Richards developed it further over the seasons, adding variations, using the momentum to fuel his entire physical performance. The character's energy came from that entrance, set the tone for every scene. And it only existed because Richards slipped during rehearsal and had the instinct to turn a mistake into a choice. Sometimes the best character work comes from happy accidents. Number 2. Larry David screamed, "That's it, I'm done," and quit, mid-season 7.
More comfortable with bald people. I can relate to them a lot better.
Yes.
The breaking point came during a production meeting in spring 1996. Larry David was exhausted, overwhelmed, fighting with NBC executives about something. Nobody even remembers what exactly. The network wanted changes to an episode, notes that David felt were stupid and creatively bankrupt. He'd been dealing with this for 7 years, in constant battles with people who didn't understand the show, defending every joke and storyline against corporate interference. This particular meeting, something snapped. David started yelling, not his usual frustrated arguing, actual screaming. He told the executives they were idiots, said the show would be better without their input, and declared he was done listening to people who didn't understand comedy. Then he stood up, looked at Jerry Seinfeld and said, "That's it, I'm done," and walked out of the meeting. Production staff sat in stunned silence. Seinfeld went after him, tried to calm him down, but David was resolute. He quit on the spot, mid-season 7, and didn't even wait for the season to finish. The remaining episodes were completed in chaos, with writers scrambling to fill the leadership void. David refused to come back officially, wouldn't reconsider, needed to escape the pressure. His departure changed the show permanently. The tone shifted slightly in seasons 8 and 9, less cynical, slightly warmer than David would have allowed. But he couldn't stay away completely, kept contributing secretly, and called the writer's room constantly. His official exit was explosive and dramatic, but his actual exit was gradual and incomplete. Sometimes you have to rage quit to create breathing room. Number 1, the show was supposed to end with Jerry actually going to prison. The series finale that aired in May 1998 showed the gang going to jail for violating a Good Samaritan law, watching them get sentenced for being terrible people. But it ended ambiguously, with the suggestion they'd get out eventually, that life would continue somehow. That wasn't Larry David's original vision. His version was much darker, more final, more honest about consequences. In David's original finale script, Jerry, George, Elaine, and Kramer were sentenced to real prison time, years behind bars, and that was it. The show ended with them actually imprisoned. David's version had a final scene showing them in separate cells, unable to have their usual conversations, isolated from each other, genuinely suffering consequences for the first time. No joke at the end, no wink to the camera, just the reality that these terrible people finally face justice. The button scene would have been silent, the 4 of them alone in cells, the implication clear that their lives as they knew them were over. It was bleak, uncompromising, and completely true to the show's philosophy. These people never learned, never grew, and eventually that catches up to you. NBC executives read it and panicked. Test audiences for this version hated the bleakness, wanted something lighter, needed hope. The network forced changes, made David soften the ending, and added ambiguity about their prison time. David complied reluctantly, but his original vision was much darker. He believed the show should end with real consequences, that 9 seasons of sociopathic behavior deserved real punishment. The aired version was a compromise that satisfied nobody. David's original ending would have been more controversial, but more honest. Bonus fact: the deleted Puerto Rican Day, scene that caused a boycott.
6 runs in the bottom of an 8th.
I gotta see this game. If it wasn't for this guy, we could get out of here.
Traffic's a killer, ain't it?
The Puerto Rican Day episode aired in May 1998, just before the series finale. It featured the gang stuck in traffic during the Puerto Rican Day parade in Manhattan. One scene had Kramer accidentally setting a Puerto Rican flag on fire while trying to dispose of a sparkler, then stomping on it to put out the flames. The studio audience laughed during filming. Nobody flagged it as problematic, and it aired nationally. Within hours, NBC was flooded with complaints. The Puerto Rican community was outraged. Burning and stomping on a flag, even accidentally in a comedy, was seen as deeply disrespectful. Protests organized outside NBC headquarters. The National Puerto Rican Coalition demanded an apology and the scene's removal. NBC issued a statement defending the scene as accidental slapstick, with no malicious intent, but the backlash intensified. Advertisers started pulling support, threatening to boycott the show entirely. NBC caved within a week. They edited the episode, removing the flag-burning scene entirely for all future broadcasts. The original version aired once and never again. Syndicated versions, DVD releases, and streaming all use the edited cut, where Kramer's flag incident doesn't exist. The deleted scene remains locked away, deemed too offensive to ever air again. Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld defended it as innocent physical comedy taken out of context, but the damage was done. Sometimes jokes that work in a writer's room explode in the real world in ways nobody anticipates. Seinfeld didn't follow the rules. It survived terrible test scores, killed beloved characters, and ended darker than anyone wanted, because sometimes the best shows hide the ugliest truths behind the laughter.